Our next conversation today is with Reuters White House correspondent and Colorado native Jeff Mason. He's in Delaware today as President Biden is there recovering from COVID. Jeff, thank you for your time.
My pleasure. Good to be with you, Kyle.
So you have fresh reporting out this morning that one of Colorado's Democratic senators, John Hickenlooper, thinks that Biden is working towards what he says is best for America, and Hickenlooper told you that what he thinks is best for America is Biden dropping his reelection campaign. I mean, from where I sit in Colorado, Biden's exit from the race is feeling more and more inevitable, but you sit a lot closer to this. What do you think?
I mean, I think it's certainly moving in that direction based on the sources I've spoken to, including Senator Hickenlooper, who made clear in our interview that he's a big fan of Joe Biden. And he talked about the grief that the party has and that people like he have at seeing someone who they believe to be perhaps the best president of their lifetimes. That's what Hickenlooper said, needing to step aside, but just not being the person right now for this moment to lead the party to victory. That said, President Biden has been very defiant despite calls from top Democrats over the last couple of weeks since his debate performance, and has not said yet that that's where he's at. But there is certainly a lot of pressure. And I'm also reporting today with a couple of colleagues at Reuters that he is soul searching and taking these calls very seriously.
Yeah, you start to see that door being cracked open by the Biden team. Based on what you know about the president from covering him in the White House, if he goes, what will be the argument that breaks through?
I think the argument that will break through is the one that he actually articulated at that press conference, which is if someone can show him there's no way you can win, then he will put party ahead of himself. He wants there to be a Democrat in the White House next year. He wants Donald Trump to be defeated. He has long thought that he's the best person to do that. And if he's able to be convinced through polling, through his advisors, who up until now have been very supportive, or otherwise through other Democrats like Nancy Pelosi and the other calls or the other lawmakers who have called for him to step aside, if they can make that argument and prove it to him substantially that he's not in a position to win, then I think he would step aside.
When President Biden held that first high-stakes press conference at the NATO summit, his first since the disastrous debate performance, you were called upon for the first question to the president in that moment. All of America was watching. What were you thinking, and what were you thinking when in his answer he flubbed and said Vice President Trump?
Well, first of all, I was the answer, and that press conference came shortly after he had also flubbed up the names of President Putin and President Zelensky just an hour or two before at that NATO summit. So we were all sort of on pins and needles to see how he would do at that press conference. And mine was the first question, as you noted, and he answered it, but he made that verbal misstep and didn't seem to realize that he had. So that ended up being one of the bigger quotes from that night. That said, he came out that night in the press conference and again used that defiance that I was referring to earlier, and really tried, I think, to show Democrats who are worried about him that he's got this. As for me, what was going through my head, I don't know. You just want to be sure that you get through the question and set an appropriate tone as well, at least at the start of the press conference, which I feel like we did.
Take our viewers inside the mechanics of those moments, right? I think a lot of people have misconceptions about how those press conferences with the president works. They either think that you know that you're going to get called on or that the president knows what you're going to ask about. Take folks inside how the process works.
Sure. Well, I can definitely tell you that he doesn't know what I'm going to ask. I would never submit my questions in advance to the White House. We do sometimes, it depends on the White House, but we do sometimes get a heads up that we're going to be called on. That happened during the Obama years when I covered his White House. It occasionally happened during the Trump years. They didn't always give a heads up, but they sometimes did. And during the Biden White House, we will often get just sort of a clue that we're going to get called on. That said, as I tell my journalism students, you have to be ready either way. So if you think you're going to get called on or you're not sure if you're going to get called on, it's always smart to have a whole list of questions. And you don't always know what order you're going to be called on. So in some ways, though, the pressure is high when you're first. It also kind of takes the pressure off once you've asked your question, because then you know you don't have to be going through your list either on paper or in your head and crossing off questions that other people are already asking.
Tell Coloradans about your story, from growing up here to reporting on the White House for Reuters. What did that path look like?
Sure. I grew up in Aurora and Littleton. Went to high school at Heritage High School in Littleton, and had a great childhood in Colorado. I love the state. I wear a Colorado hat proudly wherever I go as part of the White House press pool. And then I went to college at Northwestern and studied journalism there. And I joined Reuters while I was abroad in Germany, and started out covering business news, and then moved to Brussels and covered the European Union for 3.5 years. And then I moved to Washington in 2008 to cover the 2008 election, which at the time I thought was going to be the most exciting election we'd ever see, with Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama and John McCain. I think we've had more exciting ones since. And then I started covering the White House when Obama started as president in 2009.
One last question for you, Jeff. There is a lot of criticism of the media these days. Donald Trump has made it his brand. The right has embraced that. There's a tremendous onslaught of media criticism from the left these days in terms of how President Biden's fitness to serve is being covered. From a personal perspective, just as one journalist, but one who has a powerful platform covering the White House for Reuters, what are you trying to do every day as a journalist?
What I'm trying to do every day, Kyle, is no doubt what you're trying to do every day too, and that's just tell the truth and get the facts out there and tell stories that matter to people, that matter to voters, that matter to people who are making decisions based on what's going on in the political world. But the most important thing to me is just to be accurate. It's important as well to be fast. We're always competing with each other in the world of journalism, but the most important thing is to be accurate. And I think the media should be and is open to constructive criticism, and I get feedback all the time. I know you do too, and I take it seriously if I feel like there's something that is legit or something that I could have done better. But I will tell you that every day, every single day that I'm in this job, I work to stay neutral and to get the news out fairly, accurately, and speedily. And it's a challenge, and it is a privilege. You get to see a lot, and our stories really do matter. But I think if anything I've learned over the last several years in Washington, the role of the media and the role of the First Amendment in our democracy is just so pivotal, and it's an honor to be a part of it.
Jeff Mason, White House correspondent from Reuters, Colorado native. I appreciate your time. We've been looking for an opportunity to get you on the program for a long time. I hope we can have you back.
I'd be delighted. Thanks, Kyle.